welcome back. Today I thought I would show you how I approach one of the questions I get asked a lot, which is, where do you get your inspiration from? How do you go about designing a quilt? So you've just seen some rather gorgeous footage from a place called Aberglasney, which is not far from where I live in Wales. I've taken some photographs as well. Here's the sort of pavementy bit that you saw, and some colour reference pictures that I've printed out. But one of the things I do as a designer and quilter and all that sort of thing is I look really carefully all around me, and it's something that I have done always, as long as I can remember. And years ago I used to live near Bath. I actually found somebody else that does the same thing, and this is a book that she wrote called Quilt Designs from Decorative Floor Tiles by Christine Porter. She's got the reference photographs somewhere. Here we go. So she's got reference photographs like this, and these floors here, these sort of Victorian encaustic tiles, and then she's turned them into quilt designs. And it just goes to show you, you know, everywhere you go you'll see different designs of things. And if you're not confident about translating a design from what you see around you, this book is a really excellent place to start. I'll put the description for it in the description. I'll put all the information about it in the description, but I just thought I'd show you a quick sort of flick through of different things. And it's really nice the way she approaches everything as well, and how she tries to replicate the sort of colours and things like that by using batiks mainly. So, and she's also done different sort of colour alternatives, and it's amazing because I'm looking at something like that, whilst it's not my cup of tea, it's very kind of now looking, the colour combinations. And this book was published in 2003, so that's just pretty cool. But yeah, and she mentions where all these different places are. So my number one thing would be just really have a look wherever you go at things like paving, walls, floors, sometimes ceiling designs, stained glass designs, church windows, different sorts of architectural things, church floors. Here's a church floor, and you'll just start looking, and you'll see these design choices that have been made in like everyday life. You know, someone made that design choice to do something. Isn't this fascinating? Look at this, with all these different sort of compasses. So that's a really good place to start. So what I want to do is base a design on this paving. I couldn't get far enough away, sorry about the picture of my foot and my skirt, but I couldn't get far enough away to show you the whole thing. But it basically looks like the paving design itself is a big square or diamond like this, and then it's got like a sort of sashing-y type thing, and then it's got an extra bit down the side, and it literally goes just halfway across on the edge like that, and then that's one side of the paving, and then there's another border sort of there, and that's pretty much it. So I want to translate that into a quilt. I could do a block like that and just keep joining them together, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is make this much smaller, because I want to get the detail of these little sort of, I think they must be stone or slate. What's it on there? I think it's stone. They're sort of like stone tiles almost turned on their end, on their side. That gives you that sort of this brick fashion, and I want to replicate that in the square. So I want to actually have the squares on point like that, so you get a sort of general idea of what it's going to look like. I might have done these too big to give you an overview, but I think I need to have them this size because we want to have sides of tiles in there. And you can see there's quite a lot of variation of them as well, what they look like. I don't know whether to try and attempt to put the sort of mortar-y bits in. So I'm going to have a go at mocking up one square. I think it's going to be bigger pieces, because even if I work on something that's 12 inches square, which would be all of that square, so it'd be about this big, I still think those would be incredibly small. I mean, how many are in one of those? Oh my god, loads. Because I'm thinking of using sort of almost like a, I think, is it called string piecing? I'll have to look that up. Basically just stitching lots and lots of strips together and then cutting it that way. So that kind of answers my question about the mortar. I'm not going to be putting these mortar lines in, but I do want to put this sashing in, but I think that'll be okay. And then the colours I'm going to choose are these sort of spring colours. So there's a very sort of vibrant pink, this lovely bluey purple, this ceanothus here, this lovely rhododendron or azalea, I'm not sure what it is. And then this is some sort of primula as well in a different colour. And then also the colour of the primula leaves are this sort of very limey green. And there's a lot of hostas. You can just about see them in the background, so you've got different greens as well there. So I don't know whether to put all of the flower colours as the sidey bits and then choose the different greens to do the sort of sashing, or to include all of the colours and then put some grey in. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and do 2 mock-ups before I commit to what I'm going to do. I think 12 inches is probably a good size to work on. I want to try and get these sort of, you know, little brick bits in, and they're going to be bigger than that, so it's going on a different square. So if this is 12 inches, that's 6. So I'm just going to put a dotted line here, and this is just working out the sort of proportion of everything. I don't even know what the measurement is, I'm sorry. So it's going to be a bit more. If anybody knows, please put it down in the comments how to work this out, because I cannot work out. That's where my geometry fails me. Roughly speaking, it's probably just over, these are just over 3 inches wide, each of these. So there's an inch, there's half an inch, and there's a quarter of an inch. That's the inch there, that's half an inch, and that's a quarter of an inch. I don't think that's too bad at all. I tell you what though, I don't want to quilt it. It's not like in the crazy patchwork thing that I do where you can overlap stuff and that takes care of like 2 seams at once or whatever. These would actually have to butt up to each other, and then you'd be like zigzagging across here. What does it look like? Yeah, I think they could do with being longer. Some of these are a lot longer. Well, maybe it's not too bad. See, like that one's really long, isn't it? So now I'm going to attempt to draw this out on squared paper. To start with, it'll be slightly easier because I just need to join points to points. I'll have to do it in pencil first, which you probably won't be able to see, but I'll try and do it hard. So I think the border will end like that. So that zigzag there. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's keep going. But this is pretty much how I approach all of my designs, is to just draw stuff out. I'm lucky, I'm quite good at visualizing things, so it means that I've got a vague idea what I want this to look like, and what I think it will look like is just working out for me the technicalities of how it's going to fit together. And then the other thing is doing this gives me a way of calculating how much fabric I might need. However, in this quilt I think it's not really too much of a problem. I've probably got, you know, quite a lot of those colours. So this is the border here. So we need to put in the sashing line across here. I want to have this in here. And I think that's, no, I'm going to use all the paper. Okay, so this is going to be the corner here. See where I've made the lines? To sort of simulate the sashing vaguely. So I'll carry on drawing this. Talk amongst yourselves. So I think you get the gist of this. I think I'll probably do the rest of this as time-lapse, and then I will attempt to colour it in some way to give a vague idea of what it might look like. I have a square template here, measuring thing, whatever it's called. I measure from corner to corner from 12 inches to 12 inches. It's 17 and a bit inches across there. If we call it 17, we can count how many times this goes across the point of the square. That should give us a vague idea of how big this is. So there's 4 there, 68. So that would be roughly 68. So it's 5'6" across, which is a little bit small. These, I'm afraid, they will have to be regular. There's no way I could do that. Not unless I was appliquing it on, and we've already established I don't want to do that. So these could be as big as 2.5 inches. So if we're adding 2.5 inches in to all of these, that's going to add quite a lot. Okay, so we've got the whole thing roughly drawn out, and then we've very handily got some lines on here. So I think I'm just going to go with these, so they'll be a little bit more regular than they'll end up being. I'm not going to draw all of these in because this will take me forever. Okay, it's hurting my eyes now. I'm going to have to stop with that. Got one. Right, so we need to find some colours. So I think purple, all the purples, pink. God, these are really not my colours at all. Right, then greens, bright greens. So if we do a little section down here, I'm literally just going to do the smallest section just to see what it looks like. That's the green. And then up here, I'm going to do one in greys. It already reads better in grey, I think, but I thought that would be the case. You just need to try these things out. Just leave it here at this bit. Let's pop that on there. Let's get a lighter grey in. So I suppose the next thing we need to do is put in the different colours. That's it very roughly with the greens in and the purples and oranges and things. I don't think I like the green in with it, and there will be a lot more variation because obviously I'm going to use a lot of different purples and what have you, and maybe an occasional splash of red and what have you. I don't think the green looks very good in that. I don't really like it. Now I've got to repeat the same process down here but without using the green. So that would be it with the green sashing, and that's it with grey sashing with bits of green in it. I actually think this works better. Obviously it takes a massive leap of faith in visualisation, but I think I'm going to go for this, or that's the mock-up I'm going to do and see how it works. Okay, I'm really glad I waited until this week to continue with the mock-up for the quilt, because I've been thinking over the weekend what kind of fabrics I want to use, but also how I'm going to execute making it. I thought I would be able to do string piecing where you just stitch one bit to another and then open it out, and then right sides together, open it out, and so on and so forth. Because of the small pieces, they're going to be 1/2 inch. That's a lot of seams underneath. So if you think a 1/2 inch piece is going to actually be 1 inch wide when you cut it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance both sides, that means the fabric's double straight away. Well, nearly. But I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work. I'll still do the mock-up that way because I think it's a good idea to try it. But I'm also going to try doing it on interfacing, where you just would literally place one piece on top of another instead of, you know, having many overlapping-y bits. I think it would be slightly less bulky, but then you'd have to top stitch it all. But the brilliant thing about top stitching it was where I wanted to put in the detail of maybe mortar, which is not possible to do in fabric. I could do that with top stitching. I could use different shades of greys and beiges and browns and things and get some of that detail in that I really wanted. So what I'm doing now is I'm just literally rummaging through my one box of fabric. I do have more fabric than this, but this has actually got quite a lot of fabric. People always assume that because I quilt for a living and design things that I'm going to have loads of fabric, but I don't. Generally just, as you know by now, generally just use what I've got or reclaimed fabric. So I'm trying to remember what sort of colours these were. Might help if I actually looked at the pictures. That was the whole point of having these pictures, wasn't it? So we've got blues, purples, there are orangey reds, magenta, and a sort of blush pink. Oh, I think we're doing all right. These are quite good. Bit more magenta-y purple than blue purple. I'm not sure I've got any blue purple, and I quite like this. It's got, you can't really see, but it's got butterflies and flowers in it, so I think I'm going to stick that in there as well. But there's already a strip there cut, so that'd be useful. I really don't have a great deal in blush pink. Excuse the fact that this is really thin and these are all batiks. It doesn't mean they're all going to be batiks. I am actually going to mix them. I like the intensity of batiks, but you don't often get the big blousey flowery prints here. And actually, if you look at these colours here and these colours here, there is a sort of relationship. And so if you look at, say, like this picture, you know, I think that makes sense. It's my quilt, it makes sense. There we go. So I've got some pink, that's nice. So these are the ones I bought. I still need some of that bluey purple colour. I quite like this. It's probably a bit pale, but I don't care. And I also really liked this effect. Remember, these are going to be in the tiniest strips. You see where the flowers are sitting in front of all the different leaves, and this has just made me think of that. You know, like you've almost got that shape. So I thought that might work quite well. Well, it definitely goes with what I've already pulled out. I don't want to have quite so many plain fabrics. So a little bit, even though they're batiks, they're still a little bit plain for me. This is what we're getting so far. And then I'm thinking this is going to be the sashing, maybe. Because either I go for what I've got, which is kind of what I'm all about, and just make it work, or I have to start collecting all the right fabrics, and I don't want to do that. So I'm almost wondering if I can get away with using this one for the sort of the ceanothus blue. That's not bad, is it? It's got blues and purples in it. So yeah, and I don't want to be collecting fabric for ages. I need to get this made because I have a big massive event coming up in 16 or 18 months, I'm not sure because I can't really count. Yes, I have a big thing, which I will tell you about closer to the time. So I'm going to carry on looking for whatever I have in my collection and try and get some variations going. Come back to you when I'm doing something different. So I think I've done the best I can with what I've got and a few bits that I bought. I think the best thing to do is just cut a strip off of each fabric, just try them all out together, and that will narrow it down because I probably won't use all of these, and I see it going in more sort of purples and pinks direction, which is really strange because I am not a purples and pinks person at all. I found this and I was just like, this is it without, this is it with, and I still can't decide. And also remember that the sashing is going to be green, and then I thought these would be really nice as a corner, so I'm going to do strips to finish off the block and then actually have a corner bit all the way like a trellis. But this is all I've got left of this one, but I reckon I can probably get, I don't know, 20 squares out of that, which is not enough. I might be able to get hold of it again. I don't even know if they still do this colourway, so we'll see, we'll see. It could be that I end up mixing greens together. See, now this is a possibility for the corners as well. I could mix them up, they're not too far apart. So these are all the things I've chosen anyway. Okay, so the more I think about it, the more I really don't want to do the string piecing. I think it would be bulky and a waste of fabric. And I've also been thinking about how you would join pieces. So I'd have to decide to stitch 2 pieces together or 3 pieces or whatever. Whereas this way, doing it my sort of weird way, the way I do crazy patchwork, landscapes, all sorts of things, it cuts down on the bulk of fabric. I can make more design choices, so I'm going to give it a go. The main thing with this is to make sure that it's going to fit end to end, and to start with I'm going to start in the middle. I'm just going to start putting things down and then I'll cut into them and what have you. So I also thought about maybe doing light and dark squares. Would that work? Anyway, I think the best thing is to just get some fabric down next to each other and see what happens. I should have probably put a guideline on here, but it's supposed to be wibbly wobbly anyway. I'm literally just taking things out of the pile. Here they are, all the bits that I cut, and I'm just picking them up and plonking them down, although I am trying to get the right size of the fabric where it's required. So, and I'm trying not to overthink the colour choices too much. Let's just grab something else. So I'm just going to keep just grabbing different pieces of fabric. Okay, I've done half of it, and I quite like it. I think it's going to be quite effective. I think I'm going to have to be careful about where I overlap stuff. I was sort of thinking these bits, you know, they sort of go up and some of them are all in one place and then there's a big long bit and all that sort of thing. I was sort of thinking about that, but somehow most stuff have come out near the middle. I don't think it's a problem. I'm not going to unpin them or anything. I think it's just something to consciously, it's something to watch out for. I think it's okay to have many all the same. You know, there's like 4 there, all on top of each other that are the same size. I think that's okay. So, I don't know, it'll probably read as quite accurate. But I'm actually quite excited about this. I think it looks kind of cool. Definitely I've made the right decision about not string piecing, but doing it this way. I think this is going to be like the sashing with a square, some sort of square here anyway. Wow. It is starting to look like that shape. Ooh. Oh, it's exciting. Now, do I do light and darks? That was the only other thing I was going to see. Honestly, I think no. What have I got here? I've used all the fabrics. All the fabrics that I chose are all in here. So what have we got? We've got 1, 2, 3 lighter fabrics. Well, there's our answer. No, we're not doing light and dark. Okay, so I will go away and pin the other side of this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron it. I've pinned it because last time I used this interfacing, everything fell off it. And then I think just before I start machine stitching these bits onto the interfacing as well and to each other, we'll have a look through the drawer together. But that's what I'm going to go and do first. So that's some ironing and then I'll be back. So this is what it looks like now it's been ironed. And you can see that it's slightly wonky, there's different overlaps and stuff, and I really like that. This is the second half, so I tried to offset the pieces a lot more than what was going on down here, and actually I think that works really well. I did manage to get it stuck to the interfacing, but I'm going to go ahead and machine that on now. So I need to choose some thread. So this is my thread drawer. This is the one that I think is going to be the most successful colour-wise. And remember, I'm not trying to match them. I'm trying to make them look like they've got mortar in between them. You can see there's different colours of sort of grey mortar, and I think grey would work really well. So I happen to have like one with a little fleck in it, which will look quite nice. One that's almost a sort of pewter colour. I actually have quite a lot of grey that I've not used. This one's almost got a sort of copper sheen to it. It's just the colour it is, it hasn't got any other colour in it. So I think I'm just going to have fun with the different shades of grey, and I might even put in some things like this. I think that'll look quite good as well. So I think those are a really good mix of colours. I'll literally just load up the machine and just pick one at random and do some bits. I'm not even going to try and alternate or anything. I'll probably just work down the section and when I think of it, swap onto a different thread. So one other thing that I have decided is I actually like the effect of this so much that I think I'm going to do a wall hanging as well, because I'd like to do an embroidery of the primula flower. I think I can embroider that quite well. Obviously, if I did that at the moment on these colours, it wouldn't show. So another time, when I next get all this out, I'm going to make up a couple of panels that use the lighter colours in the middle, as though they fade, I should say fade out to the middle, and then more saturated around the outside, and then I'll do maybe a couple of primula flowers, you know, sort of one and then another one, and make up some sort of wall hanging or cushion or something. So I'm going to go and set up the sewing machine and start sewing this together. Right, although I have mentioned this several times before when I've done other top stitching things, I think it's probably just as well to mention it when I'm actually doing it, because it doesn't take long. So as always, I set the top thread to 1 on the tension, and then I'm going to set the stitch to zigzag and change the stitch length and change the stitch width Okay, I think I'm using a top stitching needle. I think that's what I was doing last time on the machine. I could be wrong, but I will find out at some point. Normally, when I'm doing something like this, to save fancy thread like the rayon, I would have 2 of the blocks so I can chain stitch them through, but I didn't have time to do that, so I'm using the inner part of a silk tie that I've been doing for another video. So I shall just feed that through afterwards and it'll save on thread. And on the first one, I've noticed that I want to make the stitch length wider but shorter. So it's all stitched now, and this is the bit that I stitched across to save thread, so you can see that I did save quite a lot. And now I need to turn it over and square it up. So I know it needs to be 12.5 inches because I want the finished size to be 12 inches. So you can see some little bits of trimming that need doing, and these little bits here that have just got missed off the side, I'm going with a kind of overall bit, and I'll be able to just put that in the seam allowance. It won't show. So there we are, there's our trimmed up block, looking very nice. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is cut some sashing, which we decided was going to be 2.5 inches wide. I'm going to cut 4 squares, and then I'll put all that together. I'll stitch it all together, and I'll probably go away and cut it and stitch it and show you with 2 pieces of sashing, so one up here and one over here, and then how to match the other 2 sides. So this is what it looks like with the first 2 bits of sashing on. There they are. And no, I haven't ironed them because lighting, sewing machine, ironing boards, iron, all of that. Yeah. So, but that's what it looks like. So I will try and set this up somewhere where you can see what we need to do next. So we're going to work on this edge here. So while I was stitching the sashing on, I've also gone ahead and stitched the squares in, and all I did was I cut a 2.5 inch strip of this, and I had some offcuts of 5 inch strips, so I just cut them in half for this, for the actual sashing. They just happened to be a little bit over what I needed, which is brilliant. These were 12.5 inches long, as were these ones. And these haven't been ironed either, so hopefully it'll work out. But what we need to do is we want to, with something like this where we're going to have squares on the corner, these really need to match up. One of the few times when I'll say, oh, it really needs to be done. So what I've done is I've just flipped that to one side and I've flipped that to the other side. So I'm talking about this seam here and this seam here. And if we push those into each other now, don't worry about what happens at the edge. Mine actually do meet up, which is nice. Who knows what's going to happen at the other end. Get those 2 points together where the fabric's actually pushing into each other, and put a pin through it. Don't use a clip, they slip. I know pins make the fabric bulge, but it will be fine. And then do the same at the other end. So make sure your fabric's facing one way and the other way, and push those 2 pieces together, and you'll feel it when it's sitting flat. It's one of those things, it's really hard to illustrate, but as soon as you start doing it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then pop a pin in that side as well. And then hopefully, yeah, see, that's a little bit, this is batik and it's all one piece of fabric, so there's no giving it at all. This is lots of bits of fabric on a bit of interfacing, so it's a little bit wobbly. However, the magic trick is put this down towards the feed dogs. Those are the ridgy bits on your sewing machine that feed the fabric through. And just the very nature of how a sewing machine works, the bottom layer of fabric, if you're not using a walking foot, the nature of the sewing machine is the feed dog side will feed through fabric faster. And I've just got used to doing it. Now I don't know what I'd do if things actually had to match up. So yeah, it's really not far out. It's like, I don't know, not even a 1/16 of an inch too big, but it will be fine. So I will pin this one exactly the same, and then I'll stitch those on, and then I'll come back and show you the finished block. So here we are. This is the finished block. So these are my corners. They all match perfectly, every single one. And that's doing the pin trick that I showed you. If they look like they don't match, it's because it needs ironing. I will iron it, but not right now. So this is what it's going to look like with all the different stripy bits to look like the pieces of stone, and this is the sashing part. We went from this to a little drawing which I appear to have mislaid, but I will find it. And then trying out the different colours and working out that red wouldn't work and orange wasn't going to work and all the rest of it. So we've gone from this through that process to thinking about how to actually make it in fabric, rolling out string piecing, and I still think that was the right decision, because normally you wouldn't want things like this where they don't match up, but to make it read as these pieces of stone, we do. We want that unevenness, we want it to look like that. So the only other thing I didn't do is I didn't count how many bits we've actually got in here. So we've got 19, that's not bad. I can't remember what I said, it's probably at the beginning of the video, but it's some days later since I filmed that. I think I could do with making some of these pieces smaller. Now I'm doing it with the top stitching method. I don't need to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I can actually make them smaller. But honestly, I think I quite like the scale of this anyway. You can see that it's going to look like a sort of garden trellis by the time I've got all this sashing done. I think this is going to be my central block, only because I don't know how much of this fabric I've got. I really liked that. It works with the colours, it's got the greens. And if you look at this picture with the primulas, that sort of magenta colour primula, and then the green leaves, all those sort of spring greens, and I think these work really well. That's how I designed a quilt, and I will go ahead and finish it, but you won't see it for several months because I've got other projects and things, but that's how I go about it. Well, one of the ways I go about it. So just goes to show, just keep your eyes open, see what inspires you, do doodles, take photographs, and just have fun. And then before I finish up, I'm going to show you that grey quilt. So as promised, this is my quilt based on river pebbles in what I think of shades of grey. On camera, I have to say, comes out a lot more pink than it is in real life, which is quite interesting. It really picks up those pale pinks. I think of this as being sort of like a grey and purplish quilt. All of the fabrics are from the Cave Facet collective, like it used to be for Rowan, but there's other designers as well. So there's Philip Jacobs, Cave Facet, Brandon Mabley. I think that's all in this, and I bought all the fabric all at one go with this quilt in mind. I literally was so blown away with the different colours, like this one by Cave Facet. I know he's done it in lots of different colourways, but I really liked that with these coaly leaves, or something, and then the sort of ornamental cabbages and things like that. And I was so blown away with all of them. I literally, this was a back of an envelope design. I've tried to make it like a sort of traditional Welsh design, so you can see there's the big square in the middle with the border all the way around, and I even mitered the corners. I think the one at the top matches, so that's quite nice in design. And then there's like a border here all the way around as well, which you can't really see. I can't get far enough away. Oh, there we go, that's where a point meets the border. But it's made out of about 9 different pale fabrics, and then this one. So yeah, it's got quite a nod to traditional Welsh, and obviously via that Amish as well. And it's called Pebbles because it reminds me of the colours that you see down by the river. We live very close to the river here, so all those river pebbles, all those different shades of greys and blues and pinks and things. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, and this belongs to my partner, it's not mine. I made it to go in a shop window display. I was asked to occupy a massive window, so I made this for that. And then my partner, when he saw it, he said he just thought it was gorgeous, and he'd never really expressed that much interest in a particular design before. I mean, he's interested and he gives me a hand and stuff, but this one really sparked something for him. So then I had to spend the next month of it being in the shop window, trying not to sell it. And then I had to kind of hide it for another few months till the Christmas when I gave it to him. I just wanted to share something a little bit different and show you my grey quilt, which isn't grey. And also to say thank you for over 3,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I can't believe it. It actually happened about a week ago, before this video goes up, and I was like, oh, I could put something on the community tab, but no one reads the community tab, so I thought I'd wait until now. So if you've suffered till the end of this video, you have been thanked with a quilt story time thing. Anyway, thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.